One of the core features of 3D Code's painting toolset is the conditions painting here in the upper portion of the user interface. If you click on this list menu, you'll have a number of different options that are relatively self-explanatory. These allow you to set the conditions as to how the paint is going to be applied to your model. If I want to paint some darker color in the crevices, I can let 3D Coat assist me in that process by choosing something like More on Concave. As you can see, I've already done a little bit of that. I've accentuated the ambient occlusion layer. And just as a side note, you can bake an ambient occlusion layer. If you go to the Textures menu, Calculate Occlusion, I'm going to hold down the Alt key and click on the visibility icon here in the layer panel. So I used the More on Concave option, and with a paintbrush, I went through and painted a little bit heavier in the crevices than the ambient occlusion had baked on its own. Let me demonstrate that quickly. Right now I've got all 3 channels enabled, and you don't really want that. So I'm going to undo and disable the depth and the glossiness channel, because all I want to affect is the color. I'll undo that, and I'm going to use my Smart Material Preview. This preview will show me what it's going to look like if I were to paint in this area. So I can adjust the degree and see the effect on the fly. So it effectively allows you to adjust the spread and the softness by adjusting the contrast and the degree. Okay, now as I brush, you can see the effect. If it happens to be rough in certain areas, you can always go back and smooth it or erase it. We'll do that in just a moment. Now, if you want to do it to the entire model or a large section, we can do it with a paintbrush, or we could also use the fill tool. In this case, I'm going to hide this layer. I'll create a new one. I'll just call it Cavity. Yeah, just leave it at that. And let's go to the E panel, uncheck Ignore Backfaces, and I'll choose a rectangular lasso. Select all the way around the model. And it's going to use these conditions basically to apply this to the entire object. There we go. Now, if we want to smooth the entire thing, we can go to Textures, Adjust, Smooth Current Layer, and we can see a preview. 1 is the maximum. Let's try 3. And we hit OK. So let's add the ambient occlusion layer too. So with the cavity, let's change that to multiply. And I'll alt-click on the ambient occlusion layer. Probably a bit heavy, so let's make that 30. Okay, so I have another layer where I did just the opposite. Rather than painting in the crevices, I painted a lighter color, which is this one here in the foreground color. And let me unhide that. I will alt-click on the visibility icon to isolate it. So you can see how it was applied more on the edges. I'll click that again. Hide. So this was the original. Again, if I want to accentuate the edges a little bit, I'm using a soft light blending mode. I can adjust that downward to make it more of a subtle effect. Okay, so we have other options here for more on bright, more on midtone, dark, more on bumped, more on shadow, more in the lit areas, more on curved, more on flat. A lot of different options here that you can just experiment with. Conditions are also available inside the Smart Materials. Let me create a new layer here. I'll select the Smart Material, and I'm going to bring up the editor. Right click, Smart Material Editor. What you're seeing here is just the exposed channels and maps that we can use to drive the Smart Materials. But what I want to point out here is the degree option. If you click on this list menu, you have the very same options here. So on every layer, you can choose a separate condition as to how it's applied. So one, you could have it on always. In other words, there's no restriction. And another layer, you could actually have it on more on lit. You could have another one that's more on top, more on bottom. So that's a quick look at using conditions in 3D Coat to either paint or apply Smart Materials. So thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.